Okay, think about being a kid, maybe a Boy Scout, out on a campout. The woods at night. They can feel pretty magical, right? Full of adventure.
Oh, yeah, definitely. But there's also that other side to it, that unknown element. It can get a bit unsettling, especially when it gets properly dark.
Exactly. And today, we're actually going to recount 3 stories, true experiences shared by guys who were Boy Scouts. Stories from camping trips that, well, they took a turn into something strange and pretty frightening.
These aren't your typical ghost stories told for fun around the fire. These are things that apparently really happened and clearly stuck with them.
Yeah, you get that sense there's this like primal feeling out in the wilderness, especially when you're young, you're away from home, everything feels heightened.
Totally. A weird noise, a shadow. Things can seem much bigger, much more, threatening than they might otherwise. These stories really tap into that.
Okay, so let's get into the first one. This comes from a guy who's 23 now, but he's talking about a campout just before he started 10th grade.
So, young teenager.
Yeah. He was there with his close friend Justin and their troop. Scoutmaster Davis was leading it at some park. He doesn't even remember the name now.
Right.
So the weirdness started during this dusk hike. Scoutmaster Davis apparently liked doing these hikes in the near dark, testing their navigation skills.
Okay, a bit challenging.
And on the way back, he decides to play this game, pretending they're lost. Just then, one of the younger scouts freezes and says he heard something. A weird step.
That first little flicker of fear, especially from a younger kid, that can really set the mood, can it? Makes everyone else jumpy.
Totally. And pretty soon after that, they all heard it. A really clear, heavy footstep somewhere off in the distance. Not like an animal walking.
Like a person.
Yeah, it definitely sounded like a person's step.
Yeah.
Scoutmaster Davis, he tried to kind of brush it off, said maybe it's a predator, told everyone just make noise, talk loudly.
Standard procedure, maybe trying to keep them calm.
Right. But as they headed back towards the campsite, the narrator, Justin, a few others, they kept hearing footsteps behind them, like keeping pace with them in the dark.
Ooh, that's creepy. Not just a random sound, but actually following them.
Yeah. Scoutmaster Davis kept insisting, stay together, keep talking.
Yeah.
But you can imagine how unsettling that must have felt.
The fact that it kept going, yeah, that suggests something deliberate. Whatever reassurances the Scoutmaster gave, that sound would just chip away at any feeling of safety.
So they get back to the campfire. The usual routine, cooking, telling stories. Scoutmaster Davis is mid-story, and then the atmosphere just changes again.
How so?
They start hearing footsteps again. But this time, circling the campfire. Not just off in the distance, but like walking in a loop all around their little group.
Circling them, that implies observation, maybe something more sinister, like they're being surrounded.
Exactly. And you could tell even the Scoutmasters were getting worried, exchanging these tense looks.
Yeah, if the adults look scared, the kids are definitely going to panic.
So then, one of the assistant Scoutmasters, this guy Roberts, he decides he's had enough. He gets his rifle.
Oh, wow.
And fires a shot straight up into the air. Bang.
Did it work?
Instantly. The footsteps just stopped. Dead silence for about an hour. Everyone's probably relieved, thinking maybe it scared off whatever it was.
Okay, a moment of relief maybe, but temporary.
Seems like it. Later that night, the narrator and his friend Justin are in their tent trying to get some sleep. But the narrator wakes up because Justin is, like, urgently nudging him awake.
Oh, no.
Yeah. There were footsteps again. Right outside their tent this time.
Close. Very close. The rifle shot maybe scared it off for a bit, but it came back. Persistent.
And this is where it gets really disturbing. The campfire died down, but there was still enough light to make the tent glow a bit. And through the canvas, they saw a shadow.
A shadow of what?
A big guy. Heavy built. And he had like a sack or something pulled over his head, wearing a ripped work shirt, and he was holding the big knife.
Oh my God. That changes everything. Not an animal, not just sounds. A person. With a weapon.
And disguised. Yeah. And this figure was just walking around, moving between some of the other tents. These 2 kids are just inside their tent, absolutely terrified. No phones back then, no way to call anyone.
Helpless. Just trapped, listening.
All they could do was lie there, frozen in fear. Eventually, somehow, they fell back asleep. Pure exhaustion, maybe.
That image. The sack over the head, the knife. That's pure nightmare fuel.
Yeah.
Suggests really bad intentions.
So the next morning, they immediately tell the Scoutmasters what they saw. And the adults, they took it seriously this time.
I should hope so.
But then things got even weirder. 2 of the younger scouts discovered their bags were missing. Just gone.
Their whole bags. Gear and everything.
Well, that's the odd part. It was mainly just their clothes. Their clothing bags were stolen.
Just clothes. That's bizarre.
Yeah.
Not valuables, just clothes.
Right. And then, when the Scoutmasters were checking things out, they found tiny holes cut into the sides of several tents. Like little slits, just big enough to peek through.
Peepholes. Oh, that is deeply unsettling. So, stealing clothes and spying, that points to something really disturbing, like voyeurism maybe. Very creepy.
Yeah, the whole incident got reported to the town authorities. For the narrator, you can imagine, it was just deeply disturbing. That feeling of being watched, violated, and not knowing why.
Absolutely.
Some parents were so freaked out they'd pull their kids from future campouts altogether. It just shows how one really bad night can just shatter that whole sense of adventure and safety.
It really does. It brings a very human, very real kind of fear into what's supposed to be, a positive growing experience.
Okay, let's move on to the second story. This one's from a 15-year-old scout from Houston, Texas. He was on one of those high adventure programs.
So more intense than a regular campout.
Yeah, this was at Camp Alexander near Colorado Springs. They were doing more extreme stuff. For the first 4 days, everything seemed pretty normal. They were camped near the Arkansas River because they were going to go rafting. Now, this scout mentioned something interesting. He says he always sleeps badly in sleeping bags, gets really hot and sweaty. And that had been happening on this trip, too.
Okay. That detail about poor sleep could be relevant, maybe? Disrupted sleep can mess with you.
Maybe.
Yeah.
So one night, it's really late, like 3, 4, 5 a.m. He wakes up again, boiling hot. He decides to get out of the tent to cool off.
It makes sense.
His tent flap faces the river. He looks out, and he immediately sees someone standing in the river, waist deep.
In the river at nearly 4 a.m.
Yeah. And the water there is freezing, like 30, 40 degrees Fahrenheit. And this person is shirtless, just standing there, facing downstream.
Whoa! Okay, that's instantly alarming. Freezing water, middle of the night, no shirt. Something's wrong.
After a second, he realizes it's his friend, Dalton, from the troop.
His friend standing in the freezing river.
Yeah. So he calls out, "Dalton! Dalton!" Calls his name twice.
And what does Dalton do?
Dalton turns around, looks right at him, but with this totally confused expression. And then he just yells, "What the F?" and scrambles back to the shore, running.
Yelled at him and seemed confused. That's odd.
Super odd. The narrator gets him a towel, a shirt, asks him, "Dude, what were you doing out there?" And Dalton swears he has absolutely zero memory of being in the river.
No memory at all.
None. He said he just woke up hearing the narrator yelling his name. And apparently Dalton had no history of sleepwalking. Nothing like that, ever.
Wow. Okay, so sleepwalking seems like the obvious answer, but
Right.
no history of it? And that weirdly aggressive, confused reaction when woken up, that complicates things.
Totally. The next morning, they tried to tell people, but nobody really believed them. Seemed too weird, so they just kind of dropped it.
Yeah, I can see how people might dismiss that.
But the narrator says it was just deeply unsettling. Thinking about his friend standing in that dangerously cold water in the pitch dark, with no idea how he got there or why, it defies any easy answer.
Encounters like that, where someone acts completely out of character, almost like they're not themselves, and then has no memory. Yeah, that's profoundly disturbing. Makes you question things.
For sure. Okay, one last story for today. This one is particularly chilling, I think. It comes from someone who was 13 at the time.
Younger still.
Yeah, and he describes himself as being a bit quieter, didn't really click with the other scouts that much. This was the very last campout of the 2008 season, way out in October, so it was getting cold.
Okay, late season camping. Can feel a bit lonelier sometimes.
And this trip ended up being his last time ever with the Boy Scouts. You'll see why. So during a hike, he lags behind the group a bit to, use the bathroom behind a tree.
Right.
While he's there, he hears this heavy thud nearby. Not like a branch falling, he said, something heavier, denser sounding. It really startled him, but he didn't mention it to anyone.
An unexplained sound, especially when you're alone for a moment, that can feel extra unnerving. If he already felt a bit separate, maybe that amplified it for him.
Could be. So that night, he's in his tent, alone. He wakes up suddenly because he hears breathing, a weird breathing sound coming from inside his sleeping bag.
Inside his bag, not outside the tent.
Inside the bag. He feels around, confused, and finds this big, heavy walkie-talkie jammed down in there. And it definitely wasn't his.
Whoa, okay. A walkie-talkie just appears in his sleeping bag? That's not right.
Not right at all. And then, before he can even process it, a voice comes through the walkie-talkie. Deep, kind of muffled. And it says, "I'm watching you, kid."
Oh, that's terrifying. Direct, threatening, and targeted. That walkie-talkie feels like it was planted.
Exactly. He manages to fumble for the talk button and ask, "Who is this?" All he gets back is static. Then the voice comes through again. "I'm right outside your tents."
Chilling. Absolutely chilling.
And then the fabric of his tent starts pushing inwards, like something or someone is pressing against it from the outside.
Oh, no. That physical element, feeling something unseen pushing into your only shelter, that's pure terror. It's not just sounds anymore, it's tangible.
Understandably, the kid screams his head off. As soon as he screams, whatever was outside pressing on the tent bolts runs off into the woods.
Okay, so the scream scared them away.
Yeah. 2 scoutmasters come rushing over to his tent. Their first thought, it's a prank. They start lecturing the other kids nearby.
Oh, the classic dismissal.
Yep.
It must be the other kids messing around.
Right. But the narrator kept insisting, no, the voice was way too deep, too menacing. It wasn't one of them.
That must have been frustrating not being believed right away after something so scary.
Totally. They ended up making him and a couple of other scouts share tents that night for safety. And the very next day, the troop leaders decided to pack everything up and move their entire group to a different campsite, joining up with another troop that was nearby.
Wow, so they did take it seriously enough to move camp. That suggests they realized something was wrong, even if they didn't know what.
Yeah. But the whole experience just completely shook this kid. He convinced his parents to let him quit Boy Scouts right after that trip. Never went back.
I can't blame him. That sounds incredibly targeted and malicious. The walkie-talkie planted, the specific threats, the physical intimidation, it feels very personal. And his decision to quit really highlights just how profoundly terrifying that must have been.
So, yeah, there we have it. 3 really different stories from Boy Scout campouts, but all sharing this thread of unease, fear, the unexplained.
From like a potential human predator lurking around to that bizarre river incident with no explanation to a direct, terrifying, almost intimate threat.
Yeah, it really underscores that feeling of vulnerability out there, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Especially for kids far from home in the dark woods.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That line between the familiar world and the unknown, it feels really thin sometimes in those situations. Encounters like these, they leave a mark.
It makes you wonder, about those huge wild places. What else is out there that we just don't see or understand? When does that thrill of adventure cross over into something genuinely disturbing?
Yeah. It's a powerful thought. These stories are definitely reminders that the wilderness holds beauty, sure, but also mysteries, and sometimes real dangers that can stick with you.
Well, thank you for joining us as we recounted these pretty eerie tales from the woods.
Yeah, unsettling stuff, but definitely gives you a glimpse into the kinds of unexpected, sometimes frightening things that can happen when you venture out.
We hope these stories gripped you. If they did, maybe give us a like, share this with someone else who appreciates a chilling story.
And definitely consider subscribing to a Horror Docs channel. We'll have more accounts exploring the unsettling side of things.
Thanks for listening.
See you next time.